Well, tonight I thought I would talk about the Convoluted Universe material, because if you've read those books, there is so many unusual concepts and theories that I get so many questions about. And a lot of times at the conferences, I don't go into the deeper stuff because I don't want to go over the audience's head. And you know, a lot of that material is very deep. So tonight I thought, well, maybe you're ready for it. We'll find out. Because if your eyes glaze over, then I know you're not ready yet. But if you're reading the books, at least you're thinking, and there maybe you'll understand, and it will stir up a lot of questions. Now, I'm supposed to stop at 4, but this is the end of the conference, so if we get into a lot of questions, we'll go over. Because we get all these emails, and people keep coming up to me even here and wanting more explanations on some of these theories. Okay, but you know, when I started out in the 1960s, nobody was doing any of this. That's why they said I was a pioneer, because there was no metaphysics, there was no New Age. Very few people in the Western world even knew anything about reincarnation. There was no past life therapy, there was none of that. It's hard to believe that now, especially for the younger people, but we lived in a very innocent world, I guess. But there wasn't any of that when I got thrown into this. So I've been at the forefront, I guess you would say, since the beginning. I had no one to teach me how to do this, so I invented my own technique, and that's what I'm teaching all over the world. We call it now quantum healing hypnosis. But I'm doing that all over the world. But in the beginning, it was all past life regression. And I did a lot of that because of the history. I loved the history. And I wrote several of my earlier books dealt with the history. But then things began to happen, and I began to get these other things coming in. See, now it's no longer simple. We hardly ever get normal past lives anymore, but back then that's all it was. But then I began to get these concepts that were coming in that were upsetting my belief system. Now you remember, I don't channel. Everything I write about comes from my hypnosis sessions with clients. And I've had done 45 years of this now with thousands and thousands and thousands of clients. And when many of them keep saying the same thing over and over, you know there has to be something to it. And that's why I'm the reporter, and I'll take bits and pieces of different sessions to put the puzzle together. But I remember one of the first things that came out when we were doing this was the idea of simultaneous time. And, you know, I was quite comfortable with reincarnation, linear progression. I had taken many people back through 30 different lifetimes, and I would jump them back by 100-year jumps. That was the way I worked. And then these ideas began coming in, and I would think, oh, wait a minute, I got this all figured out. I know how reincarnation works. I don't want somebody upsetting my belief system here. You know, messing with what I know it. I'm not going to have it changed. But then I got to thinking, if you think that way, you're no better than the church that says, do what we say, believe what we say, and don't ask any questions. So when these ideas began coming in, I thought, well, maybe I should at least look at them and examine them. And one of the first ones that happened when I was doing the Nostradamus material was the idea of simultaneous time. Because, you know, I've got 17 books out there, and I don't know how many of you have read them all. But in that book, we were speaking across time to Nostradamus while he was alive, living in France, writing the prophecies. And it got very complicated. How can we be speaking to him while he is alive? He was not a spirit, he was not dead, he was living his life. And he began to tell me it's all Now, and here I'm trying to figure this idea out. So I'm always asking lots and lots of questions. I have a terrible curiosity. I've got to know everything about everything. So when I got these, I was able to ask questions to them. That's what I call them. It's the source of all knowledge that I've got contact with. And we call it the subconscious in my classes, but actually it's the higher self, the oversoul, the higher consciousness. And I first thought I'd stumbled on it later in my work, but now when I go back and read the older books, it was always there, but I just didn't know it. But I found out if I ever had a question, I could ask them. And I said, okay, simultaneous time means everything is happening at the same time. And I said, how can that be? We know you start out as a baby, you grow into a teenager, you grow into an adult. How can that all be happening at the same time? Doesn't make any sense. They said because you're using the wrong terminology. It's not happening at the same time, it's existing at the same time. You see how the words are very important in the way they explain things. They said, we will never know it all while we're alive. It's absolutely impossible. There are no concepts in the human mind to totally understand it. Although Guy Needler has really bent he's trying. But they said it's not the brain, it's the mind. That we don't have the concepts. We'll know it all when we die, but when we're trying to understand it now, we have to do it with the filter of our own understanding. And they said many times there are no words to explain the concepts they're trying to get across to me. So they do the best they can, and many times they invent words, turns nouns into verbs and verbs into nouns to get the concept across. But they said, you can ask questions and we will give you the best we can. And I always say, give me analogies, give me pictures, something that I can understand. But it's the idea that there is no time. Well, there is no time anyway, but we're trapped in the concept. Time is an illusion. And the ETs have said it very clearly. They say mankind will never travel in space until it gets out of the concept of time. That's what holds you to Earth. And they said we are probably the only species in the universe has found a way to measure something that does not exist. So leave it to us. But if there is no concept of time, we have invented it because, we go day to day, hour to hour. Our whole lives are built upon it. So it's very hard to get away from the idea that time does not exist.